So I can start right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, my name is Jessica DeFrenn, and this is my senior exhibition. I came into this wanting to do a couple of things with art. I've always known that I've had a very strong passion for art growing up. My family, however, it's been a 50-50. My mother's been very supportive of my art and how I want to go to art college. However, my grandparents see that it's a very risky career choice, and that I will never make a profit from it, or, just be able to fund myself and, make any money from it. So I decided to kind of test that theory with my art. So I decided how will taking risks with my art and promoting through art shows help me be more social and confident. So my previous knowledge, I've been doing a couple of open studios on Swans Island. I was only able to put 5 pieces in a show, and they would sell or they might not sell, but it was a good way to get my art out. I also was interested in doing little tiny shows in a tea house that was down the road from me. So I put those out there, and they would sell while people were having tea or coffee. I've done a couple of private commissions. They were usually tinier, and I didn't make that much money off of it because I wasn't sure about pricing, and I was just kind of jumping the gun on that one. So my artwork's always been monochromatic and very minimal color, so I wanted to kind of jump out from that and try new things with this experiment. I've also always done poems for my art, and in the presentation and in the panel packet, you'll see some of my poems that I've done that kind of contribute to my art. So coming into this, I've dealt with anxiety, social anxiety and depression for a while now. These are some pictures from my art therapy sessions. It shows how art can come through in depression and how depression can come through in art. So I thought that I would throw these in just to show my background. So here's some more stuff that's black and white. It's more of developed stuff that I actually spent time on rather than in therapy. I just scribbled thoughts. So here's some of my finished works. Still, you can see my emotional state of mind reflected through my art. And also in the pictures, you can see that resembles me. Glasses, I always draw myself with glasses. So going back further, this is 2008 when I was 13. I started, this is when I started collecting my art and actually taking photographs to make memories of it. So I was very inspired by anime back when I was 13, so this shows through that. So 2009, whenever I came into high school, I decided to take a couple of art classes here, and Dan Stillman helped me, discover more about drawing realistically and, just exploring more aspects of art. So here's me now, or before my exhibition process. Still very minimal color, a lot of tiny detail, but just black and white. So I had to find a mentor, and it was very difficult, but it's difficult living on Swans Island and not being able to actually talk to people and go into actual communities and be like, hey, hello, introduce myself that way. So I actually had to just use Facebook and what I had to contact Linda Kelly right here. And so she is an artist in Bar Harbor, and I inserted some of her work, and I really love Linda's work because it's very flowy and very free-spirited, and I just enjoy all the mix of colors that I have not tried. So a big part of this process was actually being able to fund myself. So I applied for a grant, and I was accepted, and with the money, Dan and I took a trip to Ellsworth to use my money for art supplies and organizers, frames, wires, everything I need to promote myself and also share myself with others. It was a big confidence booster just knowing that I had organized stuff, and just knowing that I had it there if I wanted to paint and stuff, whether it was just draw or paint or something, whereas a while ago I only had like pencils and paper and just drawing here and there. So here is some of the stuff. I decided to get acrylic paint, watercolor, because those are color, and I wanted to take the risk and, adapt that into my art that I've already been doing. I also bought stuff that I needed, like paper, pens, erasers, stuff that any artist really needs in their studio. So when I got down to business, I needed to be able to promote myself and get people to know who I am. So I decided to make a business card, which is taped right here. Anyone, I don't know. So it's taped right there. I decided to make business cards, and I went with the title called Antlers and Milk, because I wrote poems for every piece of artwork I made, and Antlers and Milk happened to be a poem that I lost in 2012, and I can't remember anything it was about, but I've always liked the title, so I decided to put that in. And also my quote was, "Long before fairy tales had been told, they were in the woods being lived," and that's also from a poem I wrote. So here is also, the bottom picture is a mix of my room / studio and what I've created with organization skills and trying to gain confidence just within myself, because I've been a very disorganized and cluttered, mindful person. So my first experiment with taking risk was taking a figure drawing class with Linda, who helped me get into that. It helped me with a few things. One being just being social. I was very afraid of going in there and people looking at my art and being like, she's not good. So it was a big leap for me in that way. And it also helped me just gain new perspectives, because when the model was taking a break, we would walk around and look at each other's art, and it was really neat to see how I was just using pencil, as you see in the top one, and everyone, like, not everyone, but there was a woman that was just using bright inks that were like very bright and abstract, and then there was another woman that was doing very realistic smudging and stuff like that. So it was different. It was really cool to see everyone's different techniques and experience that with other people and be more social. I also got feedback and learned a couple of new techniques. So here's my figure drawings, the ones that I picked out from the show. I became very interested with feet just because they're not something that normally people draw or draw attention to in their art. So, and they're very difficult to draw. Like, toes just jumble up and they go all different ways, and you never know where they're going to end up in actual drawing. So I did a few of those, and let's see. So the biggest learning technique wise I got from that, I was actually just drawing one day, and I didn't really know the term for it until Linda, she was like, "Oh wow, you did very good foreshortening," and I was like, "What's foreshortening?" So she told me that it was actually when you took a normally smaller part of the body and you almost made it the biggest part of the body. If you see her foot, her big toe is actually as big as her face is. So I mean, it's the contrast and how close something is to you compared to how far away something is. And I also just learned the dynamics of a human body. So I think that'll help me when I go on to illustration. I can put clothes on a human body and knowing where the folds of the clothes end up. Another new learning that Linda helped me with is I actually went into her studio. She sat me down and she talked to me as I painted, and it was really difficult. It was my first time on acrylic on canvas. I started off with this idea, which is in the very corner. It's not a very big picture of it, but that was my idea and my inspiration for the actual piece. And it ended up looking nothing like it, but that's okay. I like it how it is. I started off with something very plain, and then I contrasted it more and added depth to it. So it was really fun to learn how to use different brushes and how to add water or to mix colors in general. And there's my palette that I used a couple of times. So I went on, after I learned this with Linda, I went home and I tried it by myself just to see if I could continue learning that by myself, and I produced that piece. So after I learned acrylic on canvas with Linda, I found some wood in my yard that was just flat pieces of wood, and I decided to prime it, and I decided to take acrylic to it because I've seen it online, and I was like, that's a really cool idea, and maybe it's more easier for me at least to paint on wood rather than canvas. And I found out that I actually do like acrylic on wood rather than on canvas, just because it slides on easier and it's not as ripply and it's just easier for me. So here's also a process of how I did this piece. It was just a white piece of wood, and then I just sketched with black paint and then painted over that, because that's also something I learned, is that acrylic can just be piled on after each other and you won't see what you left behind. Another thing I started doing was actually painting and drawing outdoors. I'd never been really fond of the idea, just because I don't like being outside very much. So putting myself into that kind of thing was a little bit so-so, but I actually enjoyed it just because it was fresh air, and also you were painting what you saw, and it helped me draw trees. Because normally you would just draw a tree by itself, but when you draw a cluster of trees, they're going to get tangled. Branches don't always go straight up. They're going to go downwards, they're going to go sideways, and every which way. So I learned that through painting and drawing outdoors. So when it came time to do my actual art show, because I wanted to learn how to do an art show and also be more social, so I thought my art show would help me, because obviously people would be coming in and I would be force myself to talk to them and socialize. So when I needed to do my art show, I needed to figure out a way to make it eye appealing so people would come in and look at my art. So presenting my artwork was a big thing. So here's a couple of examples of how I presented. You had to find like frames that kind of went with your color theme. So this green one I got from Linda, and it went very well with the seahorse color. So that was a good example of coordinating your colors with the frames and just making it eye-catching. There was another thing that I was unfamiliar with when I came into this. I'd always been unsure about pricing my artwork with people. I had always kind of lowered it just because I'd rather have it in their house and them actually celebrating it, rather than, you know, me being a stuck-up person who's like, no, I want $500 for this piece, and then no one ever has it, and it's just in my room somewhere. So I had to figure out the actual psychology behind pricing things. I used a book called Running a One-Person Business to understand how people price their things, to make sure that it seems like it's a very valuable price, but it's at a decent, you know, affordable price. So I learned that through a couple of exercises throughout this book. I learned the 5 elements of the price. I also, the next slide. But I learned a couple of pricing elements, which actually helped me in the end. So, which I'll revisit later. So another thing I learned from a different book called Go It Alone, The Secret of Building a Successful Business on Your Own, was that you had to actually find yourself before you started this type of business, or any business in general. This book was actually more about financial businesses or franchises, but I was able to adapt it to what I wanted to do with my art eventually. This is a couple of quotes. I like the quote, "You do not choose your passions choose you," because sometimes I get frustrated with art. I really actually sometimes hate it, and I'll go like months without it, but then it just always comes back to me. So I think that quote is very true. This was also another learning to find myself from the same book. This was a journal entry that was dedicated to this book. It was just a bunch of questions of learning to find yourself, and it really did help me on like facing the facts, dealing with the dilemmas, and understanding that there's gonna be mess ups, there's gonna be times where I'm down, but you know, everything is gonna be okay in the end, and that I'm going to make more art eventually. So it was helpful, and this is also a picture of a journal that my senior X teacher gave me for just journaling about my ideas. So the main challenges so far were just anxiety, art supplies, low money, and the fare schedule, and rides to places because I don't own a car and my mother lives on Swan, so it was very difficult to get back and forth to anywhere I wanted to go throughout this. Also, I inserted a picture of the newspaper, which there was this tiny little article about my show at Art Waves. So here is a picture of I tried to put the black and white ones on the side so that you could see the contrast between what I used to do and what I do now, which is Still black, you still see the black outlines, but I've developed color into everything. So whenever I'm sketching, I have a notebook now that I just scribble ideas instead of starting right onto the piece of work that's gonna be the finished piece. These are some of the ideas that I've had and that hopefully I'll future develop. This is just another picture to show some of works in progress, and then the bottom picture is my end of framing period whenever I was presenting my work. Here's another demonstration of how I go about my process. I start from the sketches from my sketchbook, and then I develop them more with ink, and then finally I add color, watercolor, to both of these. So when the art show came around, I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of nerves. I was really good about hiding it, and I think that went well for me in this case. Because once I was thrown into the aspect, there was no just leaving, because my artwork was up, there was food out on the table, and people were starting to come in, so there was no way I could back out. So that was good for me because it forced me to be social and more confident. And when people came in, it was all good stuff, and even if it wasn't good stuff, that would have been okay, because in art, not everyone's gonna like your art, and not everyone just has personal taste, just like they have with music. So, you know, I learned that through my art, that not everyone's gonna like it, but there will be people that it changes their mood or just how they feel. So, I also had a guest list, so I had it said their name, and then I asked if they would put their email, just so I would have future lists to send out, so whenever I had my next show that I could send it to them. So here's some of the paintings that I put up and how they were hung. If you could see the little line that's underneath the two of those, what we needed to do is tape those to the back so that you couldn't see the actual thing it was hanging from. So that was a big piece too, is just making sure everything, you know, was neat and tucked into place. So also, this is a poem that I just put in from 2012. So because I sold a few pieces, I was forced yet again to learn another big risk when you're trying to have an art business. I had to let go of a couple of pieces, and these were the ones I had to let go of because they sold at the art show. When I put them out for sale, I was like, oh, people would be like, oh, that's really cool, but I'm not buying that today. But I actually sold quite a few, and I was forced to understand that, you know, art comes and goes out of your life fairly quickly if you're going to be an artist that is selling their artwork. So I was sad and happy to see these pieces go. I got talking to the guy that bought them, and you know, he actually had bought something back in 2012 that was mine, a print of a picture that I had drawn a long time ago, and he said that it made him very happy, and that his emotional state of mind was just lifted from, you know, having that picture in his house. So I thought, you know, if my art can make someone happy and change their mood and not make them depressed or whatever it is, then, you know, it's worth it to let that piece go and let them have it. So how will taking risks with my art and promoting through art shows help me be more social and confident? Well, a lot of the outcomes of this was more confidence. I feel like I can talk to people more about my art without feeling the need to like impress them rather than, you know, I just want to share my story with art. I sold 6 pieces, so that in itself just boosted up my confidence. I learned new techniques, tons of new techniques that I will continue to keep moving on forward with them. I got more organized, which was a big risk for me just because I'm a disorganized person, and sometimes taking that big step just is weird in my head, and it was very unsettling at some times. I was less anxious. I actually, going into this at the beginning, when I thought I was going to have to present to everyone about my art, I thought I'd be very anxious, you know, almost crying in the bathroom, but I actually felt very confident about coming into here today to show to you. I was forced to be more social, and now I'm just naturally more social, and I feel like I can talk to people. I was introduced to the art community, and I will continue to be introduced to the art community and just socializing and showing my art. I also got new commissions, so future stuff. 4 new commissions. This is one, the wolf and the rabbit. I started a new series, which is portraits on newspaper. At Art Waves, where I've hosted my art show, I'm going to be a future monitor, and I might even have the opportunity to teach illustration to children. I have a future art show June 27th, and I'm also doing the Swans Island Open Studio. Also, I might be going to Pear College in 2016. So that was the end, but do I have enough time to show this?
1 minute.
Okay. Well, then we might be able to see 1 minute of this. So this is just a process of how I go about. I sped it up really fast because I added it to the very end, just so I could show it. So this is just a process. This was a commission. I did it for Mary Ann Perlman. She has loved my artwork in the past, and she finally asked me to do a couple of commissions for her. So this is for Valentine's Day, and she had, I think it was her son and her son's wife that live in Australia, and she actually shipped this over to Australia, so it's hanging in their house in Australia. So this is just me painting. The bottom picture is of a sketch I drew, and I sent it to her, and I was like, how does this look? And she thought it was really neat that I turned the kangaroos into people. So that was how that went about. And this is how I used to do it, but it's changed a lot now because I have my own tools. Like, instead of using a plate from the kitchen, which my mom was very angry about, I use, like, disposable palettes instead now. And instead of working at the kitchen table, which she was really irritated about, I have my own table now in my room. So this was that. And I think I'll just skip for you because it'll go very fast. And that was that. And so here's my thank you. I'll be very quick. I have a couple of people to thank. My mother for being very patient. I was very grumpy at the beginning of this and being forced to be more social, but I thought it was very good for me. Linda, my mentor, Miss Mack, my senior X teacher, Dan Stillman for all the rides, Beth and Jen, and Compass Rose, Art Waves just for letting me host and also giving me a couple of new opportunities, Amy Crossman for all the rides because she's helped me a lot, and everyone who attended my art show, and also the grant money that I received. And here's my bibliography.
Questions from the panel?
You said you figured out how to price your work. What sort of prices do you use? Like, how do you price things?
Well, I put into consideration an hourly wage that I would want to receive just for drawing, and then also the cost of materials and the cost of just, like, for instance, like if this canvas costs like, $6, I would take that into consideration. And also I would take into consideration if the gallery wanted a percentage per piece or a percentage of the whole thing, or just a fee for renting the room out. Ooh, okay. So that's what I would take into consideration.
So could you give us an example of a price of one of your pieces?
So the piece that one of the pieces I sold are here, but for instance, like this piece I had for $55, just because the $5 would be for the price of the canvas, and also I had to pay a $30 fee for my gallery setting. So that is just a little chunk of money that I would divide into that once I had all my pieces and know how many's in there, and that how many I'm selling of them actually. So
Do you has working with color been just an experiment, or do you see yourself incorporating?
I think I actually am going to incorporate a lot more. I've always liked black and white just because I like the contrast and you focus on actually what the object is and the thickness of all the different lines. But then I liked it for this piece because the shading on her dress just makes me think of a sunset. So I liked that piece because if I hadn't of added color, it would just be a normal dress. So I think that I'll incorporate into some pieces that I think deserve color, and then other pieces that I wanted and really liked just black and white, and stick to black and white. So I think it depends on the piece and what I'm drawing at the time. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Well, Jessica, you mentioned at the beginning a quote about art and therapy and art.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if your art
Yeah, it's very therapeutic. I think that whenever I'm very depressed, I think, or just anxious with life in general, I think it either goes two different ways. I just hate art and I don't even want to go near it, or it like releases so much energy and I produce so much in a tiny amount of time. Actually, all that you see that I've done for this show and that was all through here was done from February till now. So I've done a total about 100 pieces I've counted. So that just shows like how anxiety and depression can just like make you full throttle through some stuff and like get you out of depression almost. So.
Now, what's your process of making a piece of art? Like outside the shows where you're making pictures of people, something like you're the seahorse
Yeah.
in this girl.
I think that for the seahorse, I actually wanted a dragon for this piece, but then I didn't know what to do with her arms, and so I decided, well, what's an animal that looks like a dragon? So it's very like, kind of in my head, I don't really focus. I just, I'm gonna just draw a seahorse. So I just Google it, to be honest. I just Google what's a seahorse look like, and I'll look at a couple YouTube videos of its movements, and then I'll pick how I want it to like interact with the person, and then I just decided that I wanted it to be like almost her spirit animal in this one, and then I just put the conch shell in her hand because that also represents the ocean.
Yeah.
So
You have considered teaching children how to draw or illustrate. Have you considered doing book illustrations in the future?
yes,
That might suit you very well.
Yeah.
I think,
yeah, thank you. I've actually been offered twice. Back when I was 16, I was offered to do a book called Spider Bazaar, which was back when I was like in a very big depression. So at that time, I just did not want to do something with other people. So I think that this experience has like moved me past, my depression, keeping me from like talking and socializing with others. Because now I feel like even if I was like a little on the blah side, I could be like, hey, I'd totally do that for you. So I have been offered a couple of illustration ideas, and I was asked to be a part of a coloring book that's going to be going around hospitals for kids, and I might be doing a mermaid for that. So I am trying to do illustration things, and I am going for my bachelor's in illustration. So that's what I want to do.
One question, what about the idea of your depressions that you've had in the past, and how is that connected to how you feel today?
Do you mean like how does my depression affect me today?
Yeah.
I think that my depression affects me just because of what I've been through as a person, and I think that everyone has, anxiety to some extent about just things in general, whether it's like, oh, I don't want to go to work today, or I'm presenting a senior X today. So I think that everyone has anxiety to a degree. I think mine has just kept me from communicating with other people and feeling like I wouldn't get rejected from what I said. So I think being able to express myself through art at first, and then also being able to verbally express myself, because people, they look at my art and they're like, what's your story? And then I'm able to be like, oh, you actually want to listen? Okay, then I'll talk. And so it helped me through that way. And now, because of that experience, I feel like, I don't really want to know if you want to listen to me. I'm going to talk anyway. So I feel like that now. So
It's
I
really
can
helped
actually,
you then.
yeah, yeah. it's
Because I
really
noticed,
helped me.
and following up with what Ms. Burst said, the idea that your art is now helping people come
Yeah,
out of
that's-
a depression. So
yeah, that's another
I
thing.
see the connection here between
Yeah.
your depression and your art, and then
Yeah.
actually helping other people that
Yeah.
have the same symptom at that
Mhm.
same time.
Yeah.
That's a very good talent.
Thank you,
Very good.
Linda.
Is it okay to make a comment?
Yes, please.
I'm Jessica's mentor, and when I first made a connection with her, she did talk about the depression and anxiety, but I really saw past that. That was, she makes that statement, and, she's young, and I thought, well, let's see what she's made of, and she is so much more than that. She is ready to go to art school. She is truly an artist. Her eye is very sharp. Her connection between what she's actually seeing, aside from her illustrations, is really sharp. She just needs to put in some hours and to have some guidance, and, you know, I can't speak for the future about anxiety and depression, but I don't see that as the motivator. I know that you see that at this point. I'm so much older, you know, I've been around the barn. So I'm just waiting for you to blossom in the art world, and you're ready for that.
Thank you.
Don't let anything hold that,
Yeah, thank you.
that person back.
I happened to write down the new learning things that she put up there. It's absolutely, I mean, takes up almost a quarter of the page, which is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
To go
Incredible.
outside and be able to draw, takes a lot of courage to do plein air, and to be faced in a group with all adults, and to be mature enough to draw a figure that is new at her age shows great, great maturity.
Thank you.
May I also make a personal observation, a comment? You have a great sense of humor,
Thank you.
and that I think you should use in your interaction with people, or when you feel things are difficult, just use your sense of humor, because I know you have it.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.